Hey, what's up guys, and welcome back to the channel. As we did last week, this is sort of my first reaction to Ahsoka Shadow Warrior Episode 5. And while we'll have more in-depth breakdown on exactly what is going on with the plot and characters like Anakin Skywalker and Ahsoka, and their relation to the current Star Wars universe and the Force itself, this video is more of a reaction. I'll be going over some of the things in this episode that I felt really has changed Star Wars lore for the better, but more importantly, the genuinely phenomenal job that I feel like this episode does to encompass all of the Star Wars lore that we're familiar with, connecting it all through a through line, at least at this point in time, all the way from the Clone Wars to the end of Return of the Jedi, and how that has impacted the character of Anakin Skywalker specifically, and what Anakin has now become. For starters, I feel the performances in the episode are really great. For the longest time, Hayden Christensen got a lot of flack for his performance as Anakin Skywalker, coming across as very unlikable. A lot of fans and people that went and saw the prequels thought of him as being quite whiny, and many would praise the Clone Wars depiction of Anakin Skywalker, deeming him to be far more likable. But what I think this episode did was give Hayden Christensen the chance to really bridge the gap between the Clone Wars and his prequel films with his acting in this episode. I felt as though the Clone Wars Anakin, when speaking to somebody like Ahsoka, came across as very likable and created a through line between all of the performances. When Anakin is interacting and attempting to teach somebody like Ahsoka, it's going to be far different than how he reacts to somebody like Obi-Wan. He's far more formal and of course on edge with Obi-Wan Kenobi, because although they all know he's massively powerful, they all deal with the fact that they don't really trust and believe in Anakin, whereas Ahsoka is very willing to learn from him and he's far more open with her. In the prequels, Anakin is constantly in situations where he's either highly stressed or he's surrounded by people that outrank or either don't believe in him. And while that is certainly a part of the Anakin Skywalker character, it is not the thing that defines him. The specific moment that really got me in the interaction between Anakin and Ahsoka is when he was teaching her what it meant to be a Jedi, and how what it meant to be a Jedi would transform over time. The ultimate lesson that Ahsoka needed to learn, as she grew disillusioned with the Jedi path, even going back and forth on whether or not she was a Jedi. Anakin, though, in this moment, teaches her that what it means to be a Jedi is ever evolving, whether it be a peacekeeper, a warrior, or something else. It is up for Ahsoka to define. It is up for her to live, to create a better version of the Jedi. The Star Wars prequels very much focus on Anakin's brash arrogance, but this depiction is Anakin Skywalker as a Jedi Master, and perhaps even something more. His command and relationship between the light and the dark side of the Force is still very much in his character. He is a keeper of balance and destined to bring balance to the Force, and because of that, he is intimately familiar with Anakin as well as Darth Vader. His lesson to Ahsoka, though, is that it is normal to make mistakes, but it is up to her to redefine what it should be to be a Jedi, and in this more enlightened state, we get Ahsoka the White. The episode also does an amazing job of keeping all the Star Wars timeline together and making it all feel like a coherent, connected universe. A moment in the beginning of the episode that I especially liked is when Ahsoka told Anakin that she would not fight him, that was something that he had heard before. This is a direct reference to Return of the Jedi, when Luke Skywalker says, "Father, I will not fight you." And this was the defining moment to me, that this is not some trick or vision of the Force. This is the literal Anakin Skywalker teaching his apprentice a lesson. Ahsoka would have no knowledge of this interaction between Vader and Luke at all. The first Clone Wars flashback to me was also a clear flashback to the second Battle of Geonosis, one of the first battlefield engagements that Ahsoka was ever involved in. The idea and reason behind the second Battle of Geonosis was for the Republic and the Jedi to attempt to shut down all of the droid factories on the world, believing that if they could do so, they could stifle the Separatist cause. This marked one of the major battlefield engagements that Ahsoka was ever involved in, and how her understanding of what it meant to be a Jedi transformed when she was just a Padawan. Ahsoka was not raised to be a warrior and a soldier, but that is what is required of her now. Just as Anakin explains, what it means to be a teacher also transforms, but he hopes that he takes the best of all the teachers that came before him, from Obi-Wan to Qui-Gon and even Dooku. Anakin, through this ethereal form, is pushing Ahsoka Tano to evolve, to become more enlightened with her stance in the Force itself. This moment and the evolution of Ahsoka is echoed during the Battle of Mandalore flashback, which of course we're all familiar with thanks to Star Wars The Clone Wars Season 7, when Anakin says, "You're a warrior, just as I trained you to be," but Ahsoka responds with, "Is that all that I am?" Ahsoka echoes her fear to her master and Anakin, echoes the same fear in what Baylan was saying to her in the last episode, that her legacy, The same word legacy used by Anakin here is one of war and destruction. But Anakin says, "You are more than that, because I am more than that." Ahsoka, as well as her master before her, is a chance to do better. Many of the same inherent lessons from the original Star Wars imparted here on behalf of Anakin himself. That Luke, although he has great potential to do bad and harm the galaxy, chooses to be better. And even more profound than this, that Vader, and one of the most sinister beings in the entire galaxy, can also choose to be better. That they are not defined solely by their acts of destruction and war, but are far more than that. This is what Luke would see in his father. The ability to be more, the ability to be better. When Anakin ignites his lightsaber and it is red, I also noticed an insanely intriguing detail. Anakin Skywalker's eyes are red. They are not the yellow piercing eyes of the Sith, but rather represent something far more. If you remember in the Mortis arc in the Clone Wars, the son, who was the representative of the dark side of the three of them, did not possess yellow eyes, but instead possessed these red eyes. The yellow eyes of the Sith, the yellow eyes that Anakin Skywalker once possessed, is one using the dark side to corrupt themselves and their own will upon the Force itself. While whatever Anakin has become clearly still is familiar and even uses the dark side on occasion, it is clear that he is no longer Vader as we knew him, speaking to the greater role that the Chosen One will have on the galaxy and the Force itself. But we will have a more complete video on this topic later. Their conflict ends, and the world between worlds melts away when Ahsoka resolves to be better, to not strike down her master, the lesson of Anakin imparted upon his student. That leads me into something that I really admired about this episode, the very deep concepts on the relationship between master and apprentice. How Ahsoka will be confronted with Sabine, and her choice to somewhat betray her in the previous episode in hopes to find Ezra. How she, like Anakin, was able to grow to a place of forgiveness, will hopefully be able to do the same with her own apprentice in Sabine. Ahsoka's enlightenment is representative of the very clothes she wears. Previously, she was Ahsoka the Grey, and now she is Ahsoka the White, a guardian figure of this new era in the galaxy. The rest of the episode is absolutely chocked full with stunning visuals with the Purgles, Ahsoka connecting to them and becoming content that she does not know the destination or the future, but that it's better to go there than nowhere at all. This episode of Ahsoka tied everything together from the Star Wars prequels to the Clone Wars, all into Return of the Jedi, with the connecting centerpiece of Anakin Skywalker and his apprentice in Ahsoka Tano. The episode concludes with Ahsoka connecting with the Purgle and jumping into the unknown regions of space, hoping that wherever it takes her and Hu Yang will lead to Sabine, and maybe together they can join forces to stop Grand Admiral Thrawn. While I thought this episode of Ahsoka was extremely interesting and a deep introspection, I thought that the previous episode was just a little bit better. It held a certain intensity that I felt that this episode lacked. Now, of course, that's not the point of this episode. It's more being introspective and growing to become enlightened. As we follow Ahsoka and Anakin throughout her journeys, it's highly satisfying. But although great, and although I love the little nostalgia bits of the Clone Wars, I don't feel like it reaches the high highs of the previous episode. But anyway, guys, thank you for giving me some of your time and allowing me to break down some of the things that I really liked in the Shadow Warrior Episode 5 of Ahsoka. And stay tuned later tomorrow as we have a lot to break down with Anakin Skywalker and his newfound role of Keeper of the Balance, as well as what Ahsoka's future holds. As always, my friends, no matter where you are in our wide world, may the Force be with you, and I hope that you're having a great day.